One of the first tricks you need to learn to start making successful green screen magic is camera perspective and proper lighting. In this video, I'm going to introduce to you some of the basics to help you blend your footage into backgrounds of your choice, making the illusion seem more real. In your MAJIK kit is a spot to take some notes as you watch. I highly recommend writing down your top takeaways because you'll be way more likely to remember when it comes time to shoot your videos. Enjoy.
Okay, so here we are. We're going to be teaching some Videography 101. So a big part of green screen magic and making your viewers believe that you are actually where you say you are, where you're putting yourself with the backgrounds, is understanding how to use your camera so therefore you can blend your background with your own shot effectively and tricking the eye. So how do we do that? Well, a few things. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is perspective. So perspective, what is perspective? Perspective, if you look at the shot, right off the bat, looks like this guy's pushing this balloon over with his finger. But this is where it looks real because the perspective is working for it. So we go to the next picture here, and you can see, again, perspective. Looks like he's picking up a golf ball. Kind of realistic. Here we go, we have someone holding an elephant in his hand. And that's kind of fun, the girl being picked up as well. So how do we apply this to our shots? Well, perspective really comes into play also with camera angle, a few other things. It's understanding what your background is, how to set up your camera to get that shot looking so when you blend the two together, it works. So here we have a horse in a pasture. Looks pretty realistic. This is just something I found online. And as you can see, it's just a green screen of a horse placed in a background. Now the perspective seems quite realistic. And the things you start asking yourself is, well, in this background, where, if I was to actually take this picture, how high above the ground is my camera? And it looks like, probably as if you were around 5 to 6 feet tall, taking a picture of a nice tall horse. On the horse you can see this is probably the center line because you're looking up at his head. So we're about at the same line level coming through here, which is also the horizon line. If we change the background, remove that to something else, and the horizon line's up here, this horse all of a sudden looks very small, and something doesn't quite work because we're looking down at the horse, but we're kind of looking up at its head, but it doesn't quite work. But if we move this horse up, see, now we're starting to get something that looks a little bit more real. So that's, again, just playing with the idea of perspective. Where is the camera in perspective to the background? And then emulating these lines in your studio space. We'll look at the next one. Here's, again, another pasture. Seems to work. The horizon line is actually still below because the hills rise above the horizon line. All right, and here's something else that I want to tie in, is understanding your background. Perspective is one thing, but as we talked about in the previous lesson, is starting to understand lighting. And so you can see here we've got a nice bright light source from the sun shining in, but this horse's shadow that came along with it, right? This is the shadow that came with the horse. Doesn't quite work. The shadow would be shining this way. So these are all things when you're putting your scenes together that you need to be conscious of to make it work. And this is what being a really good director and editor will start making your courses and your productions a lot more realistic and more effective as well. And then here's a nice little drawing of the horizon line, the vanishing point, and you can see the way that objects work. It always flows towards this, what's called the vanishing point. And if your camera, for example, was to be lowered down right against the train tracks, you can understand how everything would shift. The horizon line would look a lot different. So again, this is just something to consider when looking at your backgrounds. If we actually look here now at the background for Act 1, you can see it's got some lines here that would be pointing towards the vanishing line, right about here, if you were to think where the horizon would be. And then you start wondering, okay, well, where do I place my camera with this background so therefore my subject will look quite natural? And so since we already have a subject here in this footage that we've supplied for you, we'll be setting up this camera to pretty much shoulder height. You can see here that if you were looking at me, somewhere around here is where the camera is sitting. And depending on where you are in the shot, if you're really tall or really short, then you'll just want to place that in accordingly to make it look natural. This takes a little practice. Sometimes when we're doing our own work, I'll take a shot, thinking it might work, input the test footage, doesn't work, readjust, try again. It's something that just comes over time, and so I encourage to practice. So there we go, a little Videography 101 just to kind of set the stage and so we can continue together. All right.